mean, I was like, what? Hi there, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina, and today the book I am going to take a deep dive into is Roger Zelazny's Roadmarks. So to clarify, I would consider this a classic science fiction in that it came out before I was born. That's kind of how I know classic sci-fi is more like stuff from the 50s and 60s, but we're getting to the age now, we're all so old, where stuff from the 70s is technically classic. I think if it can be considered classic rock, then it can be considered classic science fiction. So that's my argument for why I'm putting this under a classic sci-fi. Anyway, I read this book because I saw somewhere, probably on some, sci-fi newsletter, that they're making it into a show on HBO. And I was like, oh, I have that book. So I bumped it up the list on my, classic sci-fi TBR. Sorry, Michael Moorcock, next time. Okay, bud, next time. I got this book from my local indie bookstore, and the cover is quite awesome. I mean, that's why I bought it, because of the cover. I haven't read anything by Roger Zelazny yet, so... So this book is absolutely bonkers, but it has a compelling premise, and it's as quirky as it is fragmented. It is an experience to read this book. I really adore the premise. So the concept is that there is a road that only certain people can access, which was built by dragons, and it links the future past and what could have been future past together. One man named Red Dorakeen has been traveling it for some time, and the story follows him as he's been beset by assassins sent by his past business partner. You following me? I don't know. Sorry if you aren't. So I'm going to get into my regular review of it with no spoilers, then I'm going to do a deep dive that has spoilers, where I talk about the absolutely, as I said before, bonkers things that happen in this novel. Yeah, this novel took me by surprise. There's a lot about this novel that will take you by surprise. So, the novel is really interesting in its format. There's a linear plot that follows Red as he tries to evade the assassins, basically, or just... assassins kind of just drop in on him and he just kind of takes it as it lies, basically. And then there's another kind of plot line that is these out-of-order, chronologically, kind of vignettes about minor characters, including Red's son, this woman named Lila, and the assassins. I really enjoy a novel that kind of makes me think, that doesn't like hand everything to me in exposition-wise. So I really liked having to figure out what was going on. It's confusing, but it's not complicated. Like, it's not a complex novel. Like, once you kind of grasp what's happening, you're like, oh, okay. The dialogue is really great in this. It's one of the best parts about it. The people just have some really engaging conversations. What I also liked was how it answered simple questions. Like, for example, who built and maintains the gas stations on this road? And these little questions that I had that could have been like plot holes are kind of answered later on. Not all of them, I must add, particularly when it comes to characters, but little kind of world building details kind of come out later and you're like, oh, so you kind of learn as you go, which is kind of fun. The novel, though, falls apart for me a bit when it comes to the characters. As I said, I love the concept, I like the overarching plot, and the absolute zaniness of the novel, but the characters were very, very flat. The novel feels too short. We learn almost nothing about any of the people, and the only one I even remotely cared about was the AI named Flowers, because she was funny. This has nothing to do with the format, but how, no one gets kind of enough time on the page to develop properly. There was also a lot of time given to a character who dies almost instantly, and sometimes I wasn't sure why certain characters acted the way they did because their motivations weren't very clear to me. We're also told a few major plot points in passing from the characters, and I found that very frustrating because I was like, oh, okay, I guess. Fine. Kind of just threw that in there later, eh? I did love how freaking weird the book was, though. So weird. Definitely my type of novel, in that we have everything from, like, book-shaped AI, allusions to literature and mythology, and a freaking T-Rex. Zelazny is quite clearly a well-read and intelligent man. He doesn't hold the reader's hand when it comes to his references, and some are quite subtle. I loved his style, and I'll definitely be reading another one of his. I think I have a couple already. I've got to die in a Gibraltar. I also think I have like a weird wizard one somewhere too. So anyway, someday I'll read one of those. The novel though, you know, overall, it needed something else though, like a way to give it kind of a point. Or maybe the fact is that because there's no point, that's the point. Like perhaps it's saying that no matter what you change, every time you travel or change something in a past timeline, it's still your present. Or maybe I'm just reaching here and you should just read the book to laugh at the weird stuff. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, a bit too philosophical right now. I recommend this book to, I don't know, honestly, people who like the book Star Rigger because it's also zany like this. People who are already fans of Zelazny. I'm not really sure. If you like weird stuff, I guess. Honestly, I think if you like Rick and Morty, you'll like this. It kind of reminds me of that because it's kind of random shit just happening. But the random shit is actually contextually relevant, and the allusions and references he's making are actually quite intelligent if you kind of understand where he's coming from. And I guess I could say it's like one of those really intelligent, absurd comedies in that you know that there's like something happening in the background here, but maybe you're just not getting it. I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. I don't know why HBO is making this into a series. Stars. Okay, so I'm going to jump into my deep dive now. This isn't going to be a critical analysis like my usual classic sci-fi reviews. Instead, I'm going to talk about the technology. I'm going to talk a little bit of the time travel-y kind of, not really time travel, but like timeline concept. And then I'm going to talk about a few of the crazy-ass things that happen in this book because I have to. There's some weird stuff. I've saved the weirdest for last. If you want to know what that is, you can just jump to this spot here. So onwards to spoilers. I will start though by saying that this novel does not have enough women in it. Sure, there's Flowers, the female identifying AI. There's a female dragon for like 2 seconds. A woman named Strangula for another 2 seconds. And she loves ruins, which I can totally get behind. I actually wanted more of Strangula because I'm like, what an amazing name. And then there's Layla, who quite frankly does nothing to forward the plot and is only in it for maybe 20 seconds. This is a shame, really, because the female characters we do get, you know, this exhaustive list that I just mentioned, they're really likable and they're interesting. They're way more interesting than most of the male characters, so I was like, oh, that sucked. But anyway, I really adored Flowers. I want a book of her just sassing people all day long. I hope if HBO does go forward with this show, they modernize it and add a bit more women, give them a bit more depth, give everybody a bit more depth, honestly. But will I even watch the show? Maybe? It depends what the trailer looks like. I actually usually don't watch movies or show trailers, but I will watch like a teaser of this one just to kind of get a feel for it. Maybe I'll do a comparison video if I do watch it. That'd be fun. I don't have HBO though, so maybe I won't. We'll have to see. Okay, so the technology. I'll talk about technology as I usually do. There's not a lot of it, but we have, of course, Flowers and Leaves, the 2 AIs housed in books of poetry. Leaves describes themselves as a microdot computer array built on the Mitsui Zaibatsu satellite Tasha 7 in 2086. Okay. Obviously, if you're from the future, you can just make stuff up. I did love that Flowers, I'm going to talk about Flowers again. I love that Flowers is Baudelaire's collection of Les Fleurs de Mal, because Flowers herself, you know, is quite sensual for an AI book, and Baudelaire was known to kind of push public decency. It kind of fit with her character. I kind of liked that subtle little reference. Not like I've read any, like, Baudelaire poetry since, like, I was in university. I don't even know. Anyway, I can't even tell you the name of one. The second piece of technology would be the T-Rex. I'm going to come back to the T-Rex later. Oh, will I ever come back to the T-Rex? But Michael Crichton, did he read this and then was like, I'm going to take this concept and make it a bit more scientific? Because Sundok, the scientist, you know, goes back to the Cretaceous period. He steals the T-Rex, it dies, he freezes the samples, and then he clones another one. And then he also messes with its nervous system so humans can, like, control and feel its movements. Is this guy like Dr. Wu? Funny enough, so my daughter really likes this half-an-hour Lego Jurassic Park or Jurassic World on Netflix, and her favorite character is Dr. Wu. I'm like, hi. He doesn't do anything. He just talks. And she's like, my favorite, Dr. Wu. I'm like, what? Anyway, Dr. Wu. And the third kind of technological thing is there's little things like mind controlling and micro miniature integrated circuits, but we only get these things mentioned briefly. So this is not like a hard sci-fi by any means. Okay, I'm going to talk about the concept of the kind of parallel timeline kind of thing. Maybe I've read this wrong, but the way I interpreted the book was that it uses multiverse theory of time travel. Basically, the idea that if you change something in a past timeline, the original timeline still exists, but the act of changing something creates a new branch of time that follows its own trajectory. So even if Red were to change the outcome of the Battle of Marathon, it would simply create another timeline with new history from that point forward. Even if nothing else changed, if everybody was still the same, that small difference would still create a new timeline. So the road is interesting because you can travel to places that could have existed too, not just places that did. For example, out of nowhere, one guy starts doing magic, and I was like, what the hell? Why? But then I remember there's also dragons, so I'm like, okay, I guess magic is a thing in one of these kind of parallel alternate timeline branches. Maybe it's from a timeline where magic evolved somehow. Maybe magic is just science in one of these timelines. I don't know. It's not explained like most things, but it is fun to think about. So this is my favorite form of kind of time travel theory. If you couldn't tell, I really love alternate timeline, parallel universe kind of concepts. I really enjoy that concept. So I really like this book for that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the weird stuff. The first one, I didn't think it's weird because, at least to me, because it's like one of my favorite little like tropes in sci-fi, and that's where two AIs or two robots fall in love. Clearly, I really like the movie WALL-E. And there's a love story in this book between flowers and the futuristic, death-dealing robot named Mondame. I just love their little love story. I mean, it was like literally 2 sentences. She flirts with him at one point, and then like 10 pages later, he's like, can we have a separate room so we can be alone together? And the guy's like, sure thing, guys. But I was like, aww. Anyway. So the Marquis de Sade, first of all, is not just a character in this novel, but he's been brought out of the 1700s to teach writing, and he hates it. So he's introduced like just briefly at the start, and then like 115 pages later, he comes back, he's writing, he's decided he hates this job and he's going to quit. So he goes to the medical center or the lab and he knocks out the doctor, he steals the T-Rex. Remember, you can like he can like control the T-Rex, but also kind of feel, he can like mind link with the T-Rex basically and control it. And then he takes the T-Rex to his boss's office where he tries to murder his boss via T-Rex. His boss happens to be Chadwick, who is the guy that called the assassins onto Red. Red is there talking to him about this. See how I said that the plot kind of wraps up really quickly? You're just like, what? And then as the Marquis is threatening Chadwick, one of the dragons comes out of nowhere and they argue about the morality of recreating this creature and then controlling it. Then we're presuming that the T-Rex and the dragon start fighting because everyone else runs away. But we learn later that the dragon ends up the T-Rex. What the f is going on in this book? Like, what is going on? But then you remember that it's the Marquis de Sade, so it kind of works on like a hilarious level. I mean, I was like, what? Are they gonna put that in the show? Like, very, very, very weird. That's all I have for this book. Have you read this novel? What was your favorite weird thing? Did you like the T-Rex part? Are you planning on watching the show? I don't know. Let me know. Are all of Zelazny's books like this? If they are, I'm very excited to read them because they seem very entertaining. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah.